Almost half of all dementia cases can be prevented. A huge share of the risk comes from things you are doing or failing to do right now, and you have far more control over it than anyone has ever told you. That number comes straight from the Lancet Commission, one of the most respected names in medicine. In their 2024 report, they put it at around 45%. 45% of dementia risk, sitting in your own two hands. I have spent 15 years in internal medicine, and the patients who reach 85 still sharp, still telling their own stories, still knowing every grandchild's name. They are almost never just lucky. They did a few small ordinary things, starting years before anyone was worried. Here's the part nobody has the time to tell you in a 12-minute appointment. By the time a person forgets their daughter's name, the disease has usually been building for 20, sometimes 30 years quietly while they still felt completely fine. The damage starts early, and so does the window to stop it. And that window is open for you today. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you 5 things you can start doing this afternoon to protect your brain and push your risk down. 5 specific doable things. Number 4 is the one most people get completely backwards. And stay to the end, because there is a 6th, a single ordinary device that research links to a real drop in dementia risk, and almost no one thinks of it as protecting their brain at all. One quick thing before we start, because it matters for everything that follows. If you are in your 60s or you can feel 60 coming, and what you truly want is to live longer, stronger, and healthier, with a mind that stays clear and stays yours for the rest of your life, then listen for a second. I took everything I tell my own patients and put it into one simple plan. It has already helped thousands of people feel sharper, steadier, and more in control of their health after 60. The link is on your screen right now. You do not need to write anything down. Just go take a look once we are finished here. Now, before I give you the 5 things, you have to understand one idea about how dementia actually begins. Because once you see it, every one of these 5 steps stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like something worth doing tonight. Let me clear up the biggest myth first. Most people picture dementia as something that arrives all at once in your 80s. One day you are fine, and the next the memory is going. That is not how it works. And believing it is what costs people the chance to do anything about it. The changes inside the brain actually begin in your 40s and 50s, decades before the first symptom. 2 proteins are at the center of the most common form, Alzheimer's disease. The first is amyloid, a sticky protein that builds up in clumps between your brain cells like plaque gumming up the spaces. The second is tau, a protein that normally holds the internal scaffolding of a brain cell together. But in disease, it twists and tangles and the cell starts to die. These changes accumulate silently for years. And here is what keeps that process moving. 3 things mostly. Poor blood flow to the brain. So the cells are starved of oxygen and fuel. Chronic inflammation, which is your immune system stuck in the on position. Quietly damaging tissue. And high blood sugar, which is toxic to delicate brain cells over time. Almost everything I am about to give you works by hitting one of those 3 levers. Better blood flow, less inflammation, steadier blood sugar. There is one more idea you need, and it is the hopeful one. It is called cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve is your brain savings account. People who build a richer, more connected brain over their life have more backup, more spare wiring, so that when some damage does occur, they can lose a few connections and keep functioning normally for far longer. You can keep adding to that account at any age, even at 70, even at 80. So that is the goal. Protect the blood flow, calm the inflammation, steady the blood sugar, and keep building your reserve. 5 things do exactly that. So let's get into them. Number 1 is your plate. Because food is the single biggest daily lever you have, and you pull it 3 times a day, whether you think about it or not. I am not going to hand you a rigid diet you will quit by Sunday. There is actually a specific way of eating built for this exact purpose. It is called the Mind Diet, developed by researchers at Rush University in Chicago and published back in 2015. They followed hundreds of older adults for years, and the people who stuck to it most closely had a rate of Alzheimer's roughly 53% lower than the people who did not. Even people who followed it just moderately well came out around 35% lower. That is a stunning result for something as simple as food. What it looks like on the plate is mostly plants, lots of leafy greens, and this is the strongest single finding in the whole diet. Spinach, kale, collards, romaine, one serving a day. Every day was tied to a brain that aged like it was years younger. Then berries, especially blueberries and strawberries. The only fruit the diet specifically calls out because of compounds in them called flavonoids that fight inflammation in the brain. Beans, nuts, whole grains, fish once a week for the omega-3 fats your brain is literally built from, and olive oil is your main fat. This works because of those same 3 levers. The fiber in those plants steadies your blood sugar so you are not spiking and crashing all day. The healthy fats in the olive oil keep your blood vessels flexible, which protects blood flow to the brain. And the colorful plant compounds bring down inflammation. It hits all 3 at once. That is why it beats any single miracle food. And the cost of ignoring it is real. The standard Western plate, heavy in red meat, fried food, sugar and processed snacks, does the exact opposite on all 3 levers. It spikes your sugar, it inflames your vessels, and it stiffens your arteries, including the tiny ones feeding your brain. Every meal is a vote. You are either feeding the reserve or feeding the disease, so you do not need to be perfect. You need leafy greens most days, berries a few times a week, and olive oil instead of butter. Start there. Number 2 is the one I would protect above almost all the others. If I could only get you to do one. Walk every day. If you could put exercise in a pill, it would be one of the most powerful drugs we have for the aging brain, and everyone would be lining up for it. The science here is remarkable. Researchers at the University of Pittsburgh, in a study published in 2011, took older adults and had them simply walk a few times a week for a year. Then they scanned their brains. The walkers had actually grown the size of their hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain that runs your memory. It grew by about 2%. Now understand why that is so important. After about the age of 50 or 55, the hippocampus normally shrinks a little every year. And that shrinkage is part of what steals memory as we age. These people reversed it. They turned the clock back 1 to 2 years on the most important memory structure in their head just by walking. The mechanism is simple. When you walk, your muscles release a protein and your brain releases one too, called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. The plainest way to say it is that BDNF is fertilizer for brain cells. It helps you grow new ones and keep the connections between them strong. Exercise is the most reliable way known to raise it. On top of that, walking pushes more blood, more oxygen, more fuel up to the brain with every step. Remember the first lever, blood flow. Walking is the most direct way you have to protect it. This does not require a gym or a single dollar. A brisk walk where you can talk but not sing, about 30 minutes most days of the week, is the target the research keeps landing on. Break it into 3 10-minute walks if you need to. After breakfast, after lunch, after dinner. The walk after a meal does double duty because it also blunts your blood sugar spike, and that protects you on a second lever at the same time. Skip it and you give back that hippocampus year by year. Do it and you are quite literally building brain. There are very few things in medicine that clean. Number 3 is going to sound like it comes out of nowhere, and it is one of the most overlooked connections in all of brain health. Look after your teeth and your gums. I know how strange that sounds. Your gums and your memory feel like they have nothing to do with each other. Stay with me, because the science here is genuinely startling. There is a specific bacterium that lives in diseased, inflamed gums. Its name is Pheromonas gingivalis, the main driver of gum disease. In 2019, researchers published a study in the journal Science Advances where they examined the brains of people who had died with Alzheimer's, and they found that bacterium, the gum disease, bacterium in the brain tissue itself, the bacterium that lives in your mouth sitting up in the brain. They also found the toxic enzymes it produces called gingipanes, and the more of those toxins they found, the worse the brain damage was. The mechanism matters here because I never want you to just take my word for it. When your gums are chronically infected and bleeding, that is an open door directly into your bloodstream several times a day, every time you chew or brush. Bacteria and the inflammatory signals they trigger get into circulation, travel through the body, and reach the brain where they appear to drive the very inflammation that feeds Alzheimer's. Come back to the second lever, inflammation. Gum disease is a quiet, constant source of it, running for years, and most people have no idea their mouth is involved at all. This is honestly good news though, because it is so fixable and it costs almost nothing. Brush twice a day. And this is the part most people skip. Floss once a day, every day. because the brush does not reach where this bacterium lives, down between the teeth and under the gum line. See a dentist or a hygienist for a cleaning twice a year if you possibly can. If your gums bleed when you brush, that is not normal and it is not something to shrug off. That is active inflammation, an open door, and it is worth taking seriously. A clean, healthy mouth is one of the cheapest, most underrated pieces of brain protection you will ever find. Tonight, when you brush, pick up the floss too. Real quick, while we are right in the middle of this, if even one of these has already connected a dot for you that no one ever explained, do me a small favor. Hit subscribe, give this video a like, and leave a comment telling me your age. I read them, and the age of the people watching genuinely shapes which topics I cover next. That is it, back to it. Number 4. This is the one I told you most people get completely backwards. And I mean that. People treat this last as the nice to have, the thing you get to after the real health stuff. The science says it belongs right near the top, staying socially connected. The Lancet Commission, the same group from the start of this video, lists social isolation as one of the major modifiable risk factors for dementia. And the long-running Framingham Heart Study, which has tracked people for generations, has found that loneliness and isolation in older adults are tied to faster cognitive decline and measurably higher dementia risk. Some of the research puts the effect of chronic isolation in the same league as other major risk factors we take far more seriously. And talking to people protects your brain for a concrete reason. Go back to cognitive reserve, your brain savings account. A real conversation is one of the most demanding things your brain ever does. You are reading a face, tracking tone, remembering what was said a minute ago, holding your own thoughts, choosing your words, all in real time. It lights up more of your brain at once than almost any puzzle or app ever could. Every genuine conversation is a deposit into the reserve. Isolation is a slow withdrawal, and there is a harder edge to this. When someone becomes isolated, two of the other levers often quietly collapse at the same time. The person who stops seeing people usually stops moving as much and starts eating worse alone. So isolation hits the brain on more than one front. It pulls down your walking and your eating right along with the direct loss to your reserve. This is where I want to tell you about a patient. I will call her Eleanor, a composite of many people I have seen, 74 years old, sharp as anything her whole life, a retired school teacher. Then her husband passed. The invitations slowed down. She stopped going to her church group because it felt strange going alone. Within a couple of years, her family noticed she was repeating herself, losing the thread. Everyone assumed it was grief or just age. Some of it was something more, and a real part of it traced straight back to a brain that had gone quiet because the world around it had gone quiet. So this counts as medicine. A standing phone call with your sister, a weekly card game, volunteering, the grandchildren, a class. Whatever gets you in a room in a real back and forth with another human being on a regular basis. Put it in your calendar the way you would a prescription, because that is exactly what it is. Number 5 ties this whole video together because it sits on every lever at once. Protect yourself from type 2 diabetes and from the high blood sugar that comes before it. Let me give you the finding that should make everyone pay attention. The Rotterdam study, a large long-running study out of the Netherlands, published in the journal Neurology back in 1999, found that people with type 2 diabetes had roughly double the risk of developing dementia compared to people without it. Double. And the link is so strong and so much about insulin and sugar handling that some researchers have started informally calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. That phrase is debated, but the fact that serious scientists reach for it tells you how deep the connection runs. Here's the mechanism in plain terms. When your blood sugar runs high for years, it does two kinds of harm to the brain. First, that sugar physically damages blood vessels all over your body, including the millions of tiny, fragile vessels that feed your brain. Damaged vessels mean poor blood flow, the first lever, and that is its own path to a type of dementia called vascular dementia. Second, the brain runs on insulin too, and when the rest of your body becomes resistant to insulin, the brain appears to become resistant as well. Brain cells that cannot use fuel properly are starved and stressed, and that stress state seems to speed up the buildup of those amyloid plaques we talked about. High blood sugar even drives inflammation, the second lever. So diabetes attacks the brain on 3 fronts at once: blood flow, inflammation, and fuel. And the reason this one ties the video together is that the other 4 steps are by themselves the most powerful diabetes prevention plan in existence. The Mind diet steadies your blood sugar. The daily walk pulls sugar out of your blood and makes your muscles more sensitive to insulin. So you do not need a 6th separate program for this. Doing the first 2 things well is most of the battle. If you already have a diagnosis of pre-diabetes or diabetes, this is the moment to take it seriously. Work closely with your doctor and know that getting that number under control is one of the most protective things you can possibly do for your brain. I promised you a 6th, and this is the one almost nobody connects to their brain: hearing aids. Here is something that surprises even a lot of doctors. In that Lancet Commission report, when they ranked all the things you can change, the single largest modifiable risk factor for dementia, bigger than any other on the list, was untreated hearing loss in midlife. The largest one. There are a few ways not hearing well hurts your memory, and they make complete sense once you hear them. First, when your ears send a weak, garbled signal, your brain has to work overtime just to fill in the gaps and make sense of speech. All that effort gets pulled away from memory and thinking over years. That constant strain appears to wear the brain down, and brain scans show faster shrinkage in people with untreated hearing loss. Second, and this brings us right back to number 4, people who cannot hear well slowly stop joining in. The dinner table gets exhausting. They pull back, they go quiet, and they slide straight into the isolation we just talked about. The hopeful part here is recent, and it is strong. A major trial called the Achieve study, led by researchers at Johns Hopkins and published in The Lancet in 2023, took older adults at higher risk for cognitive decline and gave half of them hearing aids. In that higher risk group, the hearing aids slowed cognitive decline by nearly 50% over 3 years compared to those who did not get them. Nearly half from treating hearing. So if you or your husband or your wife have been saying what, or turning the television up, or quietly avoiding noisy restaurants, please do not file that under just getting old. Get a hearing test. It is simple and it does not hurt. Treating your hearing may be one of the most powerful and most overlooked things you can do to protect your mind and stay in the conversation. Literally. Now I need to draw one clear line before we finish because it matters. Everything I have given you today is about lowering risk over the long run. It is prevention, and the evidence for it is real. It is not a treatment for someone who already has dementia, and it is not a guarantee, because some risk is genetic and outside anyone's control. And there are signs that are not about slow prevention at all, and mean you call a doctor now. Sudden confusion that comes on over hours or days. A fast, steep drop in memory or thinking over weeks rather than years. Getting lost in a place that should be familiar. Big changes in personality or behavior. Those can point to something treatable. An infection, a medication problem, a thyroid issue, a vitamin deficiency, and some of those are completely reversible if caught. So those get a phone call now, today. Let me make this simple, because a plan you can picture is a plan you will actually do. Here is what to start this week. 1. At your next meal, put a serving of leafy greens on the plate and swap your butter for olive oil. Keep berries in the freezer so they are always there. 2. Take a 30-minute walk today, even broken into 3 short ones. The one after dinner is the most powerful. Then do it again tomorrow. 3. Tonight when you brush, floss as well. If your gums bleed, book a dental cleaning this week. 4. Pick up the phone and make one plan with another human being. A call, a coffee, a class, a group. Put it in your calendar like the medicine it is. 5. If you have any concern at all about your blood sugar or about your hearing, book the test. Both are simple and both protect your brain more than almost anything else on this list. None of this is exotic. None of it is expensive. And all of it starting today is you making deposits into a brain you are going to need for a long, good life. So here is the thread I want to leave you with. Everything today was about the damage that builds silently for 20 or 30 years before anyone notices. But that raises an obvious question. If it is building all that time, are there early signs, small ones that show up long before the memory clearly goes? There are, and they often show up not in your memory at all, but in how you walk, how you speak, and even in your sense of smell. In my next video, I am going to walk you through the earliest warning signs of dementia, the subtle ones that appear years ahead, so you know exactly what to watch for in yourself and in the people you love. Subscribe so it lands in front of you, and I will see you in the